Good morning. Well, this is one of my favorite churches to come and speak at because Peter Dunn was a college-age intern with me when I was a director of student ministries at a church. And so it's really hard for me to see him as Pastor Peter simply because I knew college Peter and he was wild. We had a blast when we worked together, and it's funny to hear he's in Mexico because that's the images I have of him, was sending him into the field to entertain the children. But then, on top of having Peter, you got Rochelle, and Rochelle is one of my APU students. So I come to St. Andrews, and I just know this is a place that takes care of people, and I love that. Rochelle is a wonderful young woman, and I am just so excited that she's here. So thank you, St. Andrews, for taking care of the ministers that I love. So I'm just grateful to be here. I wanted to start this morning by looking at our two texts. They're pretty brief, but they're hefty texts. So we're looking at the book of Acts this morning, Acts 2, verse 42, and it says this: "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer." And then Romans 12, beginning in verse 9, says this: "Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need, and practice hospitality." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So one of the things that you should know about me is I love anything cheesy. I love love, and when there was the option to preach on Romans 12, the second part, I thought, that's what I want to do. That's why I picked this Sunday when Peter sent me a couple options. But in 1993, which the 90s were a great era for cheesiness, a cheesy country music song sung by Colin Ray made its way to number 4 in the Billboard charts. And the title of the song was "That Was a River." It's a song of a man in love, reassuring the love of his life that the love that they shared is unmatched by any other love they'd had prior. And he sings these words: "Yes, there was a time I thought she had it all. She meant the world to me back when the world was small. That was a river. This is an ocean that never carried this much emotion. Nothing compares to this deep devotion. That was a river. This is the ocean." Nothing compares to this deep devotion. In Christian circles, we like to use this word devotion, but really, what do we mean by this? What does it look like to be centered in our devotion? This song acknowledges that there are many things that can capture our heart's attentions, big and small things. But the invitation to be devoted is to be centered and grounded. And as Christians, we see this centering and grounding to be in Christ and in community. So, how do we get to a place in our faith where we can say, nothing compares to this deep devotion? What does our worship look like? What do our lives look like? Well, I believe that the answer to this is found in the scriptures. The reading that I just read from Romans starts out saying, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. If we are to be a people of devotion, we must think about what it is that we're cultivating. Devotion sounds so nice and pretty, but the truth be told, devoted people are strong. They are discerning people. They're resilient to withstand the hard times, knowing that resilience produces a love that is not based on things that are shallow or fickle feelings, but it's rooted and grounded and centered. It's devoted. My hope and prayer for you as a church community and as individuals is that you will live in resilient devotion. Think of a rubber band. Good rubber bands can be stretched. They're flexible. They bounce back. I have a lot of hair. I need a good rubber band to hold it all up. Have you ever tried to stretch out a rubber band that's on its last leg? It snaps. Sometimes dust flies everywhere. Sometimes it will stretch, but you can see the cracks. And you wonder if it's going to be able to hold on or if it's just going to let go. And when it does let go, it doesn't return to its regular size. It's lost its elasticity. So it can only be used really cautiously and for simple things. And a resilient community is like a good rubber band that hasn't lost its elasticity. And from what I know about this church, you are resilient. You're seeking fresh vision and creativity and joy and fun. And those are important ingredients for resilience and devotion. So today, as we look at these texts, I want to talk about two things: your roots and your blooms. So, first of all, having deep roots is important to being resilient. Deep roots ground us. They are actually the ways that we're able to withstand the storms that life brings. But here's the thing. Growing deep roots is not the glamorous side of life. It's literally like watching grass grow. When you plant a seed, all the heavy lifting is happening in the dirt beneath the surface. There's not a lot to see here when things are growing. In fact, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't even know that anything is happening. You just see piles. It's a slow and mundane process from the surface. In fact, it's not only mundane, it's actually messy. Have you ever started a garden? You start with things like dirt, and worse, and probably because I'm a youth pastor, I like to talk about it, manure. It's like poop. You have to get down on your hands and knees and dig and shovel and have the right mix of poop products to make things grow. You have to shovel and rake and use garden tools. It's similar for us too. The root growing portion of our lives is not immediately visible to other people, and it's incredibly hard work. Some people may have no appreciation for the deep work that is happening us in the parts that they can't see of our lives. Often people can't see the way that we're shaped when we've had to navigate our ways through broken relationships or massive disappointments in our careers, or raising children who don't do things the way we think that they should, or picking up the pieces of our lives after loss has stripped us of our plans, financial crisis that shakes us to the core, or the longing for our lives to be different, and so much more. People don't know what's going on beneath the surface. People don't get to see the way that these things cause deep roots to grow. The times where we agonize over our future or worry if we're going to make it through what we're struggling with and just trying to take the next steps. Often those aren't public knowledge. The metaphorical manure in our lives is not always what people see from the outside looking in. But that dirt and fertilizer is the stuff that is stretching us and growing us, challenging us, and giving us roots. All of us have experienced these seasons of root growing in one way or another. And while it's not glamorous, without roots, we can't sustain any kind of growth in our own lives or in our communities. So if we are to be people of devotion, we have to endure the times where we feel like we're just staring at piles of dirt. As we're becoming people with deep roots, we find out that what we do is not as important as who we are. Being a community with deep roots doesn't mean that we're just running around everywhere in a crazy frenzy like buzzing bees around the hive trying to get stuff done. Instead, it's actually a time where we have to think about, who are we? It's not get busier, it's get to know who we are. A colleague of mine, when I worked at Fuller Seminary, told this story that I will never forget. His name's Steve Yamaguchi, wonderful man. He told a story about when he went fly fishing a few years ago. He and his friends decided to head to the mountains for a fly fishing trip, and the way that he describes the beauty of where he was it was just majestic. There were the mountains with the snow caps and a river that ran through the valley and just the freshness of every place that they looked. It was this beautiful place. And Steve talked about the day that they went fishing. He said he wore waders so that he could actually go into the river and do the fly fishing. He was able to stand in the river with his waders. And then he even describes, he said in the afternoon this storm rolled in, but it was a gentle storm where light rain fell on him. So as he fished, he just had rain falling on him. And he said it was one of the best days of his life. After they went back to their cabin, they decided that they were going to enjoy the fresh fish that they caught, and so they began to prepare for a meal. But while they were preparing, Steve began to feel really sick. His body began to ache, and he became nauseous and had this pounding headache, and just really he was overcome by not feeling well. And thankfully, one of the friends that he had on the trip with him was a medical doctor. So he came into Steve's room and he said, "Steve, how you doing?" And Steve's like, "I'm just not feeling well." And he told him the symptoms he was having. And his friend said to him, "Steve, I know it was beautiful today. We were in the river. We saw the snow on the mountains. It rained on us a little bit. We spent the whole day in the water. But did you drink any water when you were out there today?" And it dawned on him, he hadn't had a drop of water all day. He spent all his time in the water and he actually forgot to drink it. And he became severely dehydrated, and that's what was wrong with Steve. So his story reminds us of this important fact that it's who you are is more important than what you do. You can't stand in the water and not drink it. So St. Andrews, this rings true for you today too. Who you are is more important than what you do. And I do believe that what you have done and will continue to do as a church has been amazing. But the most important part is that you have deep roots, rooted in God's love for you individually and as a community. This is who you are, and it will always be more important than anything that you do. So then only after we consider our roots can we talk about blooming. This is the doing that comes because of our being. You can think of it as the fruit of your devotion. In our scripture reading, we hear the exhortation to let love be sincere, let it be genuine. And as you continue your work together in this community, I would encourage you to love from the center of who you are. Get people in Redondo Beach talking about how well this community cares for each other and for the people outside of these walls. My pastor in college used to regularly define love as wanting what's best for the object loved. And this was a really helpful definition for me, as it didn't mean that there wouldn't be conflict. In fact, it almost presupposes there is conflict. It didn't put this expectation of a person or a community as always being perfect. But at the heart of things, to love is to ultimately want what's best for the other. My grandma, Lorene, was the most amazing gardener I've ever known. She was the type of person that if you bought her a bouquet of flowers and she really liked a certain flower, she'd take it out of the bouquet and somehow plant it in the ground and it would grow. It's something I have not inherited, not in the least. She lived in the back house at my parents' house for many years, and while she was there, she planted this most incredible orange rose from a bouquet that she loved. And she moved out of my parents' house about 17 years ago, and she passed away in 2019. But this rose continues to bloom. That rose has been through a lot because I've had to take care of it. It's been pruned down to nothing. It was accidentally painted when my parents' house was painted. It has gone through a lot. But every few months, that rose blooms the most vibrant orange flower, and it's truly the most resilient plant I've ever seen. May you know this kind of resilience. May you be deeply rooted, knowing that you are, that who you are, and that you are deeply loved by God and your community. And may you also have a season where those deep roots produce more blooms than you could have even thought possible. Maybe blooms that live beyond your lifetime. May you work well together and create really cool things together as a community. In your daily work, at your jobs, and in your homes. May you experience an abundance and a joy that emerges from deep within your soul. From that place, may you not only tolerate the people around you, but may you love them. Reach out to them, care for them, offer them patience when you'd rather bark at them. So, rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Don't give up in the hard times, but persevere in prayer. Let your roots run deep. And know that a season of staring at dirt often leads to new things growing. Serve each other and other people. Be quick to offer hospitality. What could it look like for this community to lean into its deep roots and to let these roots produce transformative blooms all around you? There are two pieces of art in New York City that I visit almost every time I'm there. The first one is in Rockefeller Center, right across the street from St. Patrick's Cathedral. It's this enormous bronze sculpture of the Greek mythological god Atlas, not Athens. He's from Athens. But Atlas was a Titan god who was condemned to hold up the heavens or the sky for eternity. And so that's where you see him holding up the earth. He's muscular, he's strong, he's able to do it even though it's tough. And you see him in this picture holding up the world with all of his strength. But the whole weight of the world is on his shoulders. The second piece of art is across the street in St. Patrick's Cathedral. If you walk down the long aisle of the cathedral and go to the other side of the altar, there's a small statue of the boy Jesus, and he's standing there, holding out his hand. And what's in his hand kind of looks like a ball. But if you look a little closer, you realize it's actually the world. There's the boy Jesus holding the world so effortlessly. The very same world that Atlas across the street is struggling to bear on his shoulders. On the days when you feel like you're trying to bear the weight of the world on your shoulders, when you are trying to make things bloom and they just don't seem to want to grow, remember that you were not meant to bear the weight. You can't do the heavy lifting. In your devotion, trust the one who is growing your roots. God is at work in the dirt and the mess of your life. God is growing roots that will one day produce blooms. God is at work in you. So remember today that God is with you, and when the weight is too much, remember it's God who carries it. And in this garden of devotion, may you love one another well, trusting the one who is faithful to bloom you where you're planted. Amen.